Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining and me and giving your company to this study of the perfection of wisdom by Rongton's very creative writing. So, as usual, we will start with the refuge, and for immeasurables, please join your hands at the heart and think of be inclusive of all the people and situations that require a lot of loving kindness and understanding and compassion to lots of difficult situations the world is facing, individuals are facing, even without those things. On top of that, of course, when these kind of collective difficulties face, many people have no coping strategy. So think kindly of them in your prayerful motivation to do these teachings as we do these prayers. So we'll screen share the prayer so those, if you don't have a copy. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Fute Ladama by virtue Ajive Handala Ajare Buddha Vudu and Abu Dharma Sangha Aitere Future Ladama by virtue Ajivandala Ajare Buddha Vudu and Abu Dhamma Sangha Aitere Future Ladama by virtue Ajivandala Ajare Buddha Vudu happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never bar from the happiness that no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never bar from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings happiness and the cause of happiness. be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never bow from the happiness that no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far, according to the intelligence and predisposition of it, where the agenda Dhamma agrelo and common So last week we covered the second of the man after talking about the 10 paramitas in relation to 22 analogies. We then went to what actually is the practice of the perfection of wisdom. The practice of the perfection of wisdom is meditation on the emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. And so that is the actual ideal meditation on the perfection of wisdom. But you don't get to do those meditation on the perfection of wisdom of emptiness of everything, all signlessness of everything. We see so many things to realize signlessness is everything is full of signs. We're suffering full of signs, and we don't see the emptiness of them. And so signlessness, emptiness, and wishlessness are three thorough doors of enlightenment. And so we talked about that. Now, in order to be able to do that, we have to now move to the second topic, which is the Four Noble Truths. We talked about the Four Noble Truths in relation to each of the 6 paramitas, but here the Four Noble Truths will be expounded in a greater depth. So it says that the Four Noble Truths are these truths are only seen by those who have the wisdom discerning the reality as it is. Ordinary beings do not see these truths, and so that's why we need to understand the instruction on the in relation to Four Noble Truths. It is said, generally all things in samsara, as we know, and in nirvana are all subsumed in the Four Noble Truths. Means they are all contained in the Four Noble Truths. Because the truth of suffering and the truth of origin are in samsara, and the truth of the path and truth of cessation is one who has achieved the nirvana. So therefore, samsara is to get rid of suffering and its origin. By getting rid of suffering and its origin, then we get to create causes of nirvana and attain nirvana. So that's why both samsara and nirvana are subsumed in Four Noble Truths. So any practitioner seeking to gain liberation and knowing what to practice, means what to adopt and what to reject in their lives, whether it's behavior or views or understanding, what to adopt, what to reject. Yeah, what to adopt means to take, and reject means to give up. So the suffering and its causes are to be rejected. Yeah, and Eightfold Path and the cessation, truth of the cessation, is to be practiced. So there isn't anything that is not included in the entire kind of what you call fair framework of Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths. So tonight we're going to go over the first two truths a little bit in depth. Usually when they talk about the four truths, they start with first noble truth of suffering and then the origin. But in this, Rongton talks about firstly the true origin of the suffering. True origin of suffering. So the true origin the true origin of suffering. When the true origin meaning, usually people do not see the true origin. They mistakenly think something else is the origin of sufferings. Yeah, so ordinary beings do not see the truth of the true origin. They always go after something, assuming it is the true origin, but often mistaken. Very far from the true one. It's completely, almost like 360 degrees. So they don't have the true understanding of the true origin of suffering. Because under the spell of the true origin of suffering, which is a wrong view, and then one become afflicted, and then all the actions that is consummated under the sway of the afflictions, then every action meaning every activities, everything what one does or says or thinks or feels becomes action. So the true origin are true origin of affliction and true origin of action that is created under the influence of the affliction. So how does the true origin itself arises? So true origin of suffering itself arises. Is how does the origin give rise to the in our mental continuum? This is due to the confusion caused by failing to recognize emptiness because of the innate ignorance which cause grasping to the meaning of the basic, unthinkable and inexpressible reality as an object. And when did this confusion begin? So people might say, when did this happen? This shouldn't have happened in the first place. Exactly. It is said that even the Buddha did not conceive the beginning of samsara. So beginning is never searchable by the thinking where did it went wrong. Especially due to the confusion from grasping to aggregate as self. Like how innate this grasping to the aggregate or gender as self is so strong, isn't it? So strong in people's mind. I am man, or I'm woman, or I'm white, or I'm this. Is so strong. People really have no hesitation thinking I may not be my gender. It's so mistaken to think I'm this gender. People have so in almost inalienable grasping to the aggregate as self. So that is what we're talking about. True origin. True origin is this innate grasping to the aggregate as self. And they never say my aggregate suffers. They say I'm suffering. Occasionally people might say my aggregate is suffering. So that's at least some kind of space between us and possessor and possess. So admitting the possess is quite a reasonable sort of step. But most people don't even think it's the possess and possessor are totally different. So this innate grasping to the aggregate as a self, they develop this desire and attachment to whatever is agreeable to the body. As the body, body likes this seat. I say I like this seat. Can I have that seat? Yes. And then you got another seat that is maybe not so broad or not so good, not so right place, right in the corner. No, I don't want that seat. Aversion to that seat. So agreeable attachment and desire to the agreeable seat to your body. Aggregate me. I like this seat. We can say my bottom like this seat. I don't mind, but my bottom seems to prefer. I'm more controlled by my bottom. So one is more agreeable, something that is agreeable to your body, and then you become attached to that, and aversion to the disagreeable object, as a disagreeable object. And so this creates how desire and aversion is like a seesaw. One comes, the other comes. So you like this and you dislike the other. And then the third one is you have ignorance of the neutral, ignorance with the indifferent object, So you like one, you don't like this, and the others are indifferent. So because of this, how you can see how it's talking about how the true origin of suffering originates, from this innate grasping, mistaken understanding that you are your color, or you are your height, or you are your your failings or your success, these are the problems. These are the real true origin. True origin of suffering is misidentifying ourselves with 5 aggregates, you know. If one aggregate is bad enough, if all the 5 aggregates we identify, it's all, of course there's got so many, they call 20 mountains of ego they call it, 20 mountains of ego. Because each of the 5 aggregates got 4 different ways of getting entangled with, 4 different ways of entangling with. So, especially due to the confusion from grasping aggregate as self, then they develop these 3 fundamental afflictions: desire for self, aversion to the another, indifferent to the neutral. From these 3 poisons, then mushrooms 5 poisons. From them arise many different deluded conceptions that are broadly supported by deluded conceptions. So the deluded conception stems from the innate grasping to the aggregate, 5 aggregate as self. A lot of people, it's not a lot of people, everyone, because with hardly any exception, they say, he did that, you know, or I did this, I did it all myself. So they become the achievement. What they did, they think it's their own. They become, when we say aggregate, we have form aggregate, feeling aggregate, perception aggregate, volition. So this is the volition I'm talking about. Often people don't talk about volition aggregate so much. You know, lots of people, they did something good, they think they're great, you know. They only jumped, you know, 0.2 millimeter higher than the other. They think they're greater than the other, you know. It's just amazing, you know. So they think they are the height. They jumped. Or, you know, bring some of them baboons or some monkeys in the competition, then you will know you wouldn't jump at nearly even half of that. You know, why don't we give those medals to the baboons? Those monkeys, they'll jump much higher. Yet we think, this is, you can bear the flag. You can so attach, I did it, because the accomplishment, yeah? But if you didn't do it, you can see they're crying. Most people who go to compete at the Olympics are crying. They think that those who didn't achieve well, they think they had a failure. So they attach the aggregate of doing, volition, as me, as the other, you know. And then it's not, of course here the example of a competition is quite interesting. But lots of people are, he did this to me, therefore I am a victim. So we think the volition is he. We identify the volition of the person truly existing. We don't realize what part we played or anything else that played, you know. You know, I was thinking of the analogy of the, you know, I had just it affected me only one day because I didn't want to go out middle of the night. my phone charging this cord broke, yeah. And so means I couldn't charge the phone. But I got this fairly nice phone. I got the plug, I got the electricity, but still no charging. So, but if I had the cord, but if I didn't have the phone, I didn't have the plug, there's no electricity, what would I do with the cord? Does the cord is truly exist? Looks like the cord is truly existing thing that I'm missing, isn't it? It's not like that. We usually single out something as the cause of every action or failure or success, and then we get attached to the volition. That's why in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, and the feeling is emptiness, perception is emptiness, volition meaning, well, you know, like somebody accuse you something, you know. So you realize it's sometimes very difficult for you because you didn't meditate on emptiness. It's if somebody accuses you, it's good for meditation because even if they accuse you, you know, but you know it is empty of true existence. But if you think that you are the accused because they accused you, even though you want nothing to do with that, and then you think their accusing is the truly existing. The accusing is truly existing and cause of suffering, and then you do another retaliatory action to them, and so that's why the true origin of suffering is this is grasping to the aggregate. Aggregate means form,
feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. So we need to really meditate on that. That's what the last week's teaching was. We need to meditate on the emptiness of the accusation. Yeah, we need to see the signlessness of the accusation, and therefore wishlessness. If you wanted to be praised, if you want to be honored, if you want to always sing praises for you, that's the reason why you can't handle accusation. So, seesawing is between accusation and praise is why you're attached to praise, because even praise is also another volition, If you attach to the praise as you, that's where your upliftment of self-importance comes from that, and accusation thinks it causes you suffering. So, neither of them are truly existing. You have to meditate on that, what you call signlessness, emptiness, wishlessness. So, because of not understanding these, then all the sufferings are emerging from this. So, this paragraph is all about how the true origin manifests in the mind, how the true origin of sorrow manifests or is produced in the mind unconsciously. It's produced unconsciously, So when you have refuge in bodhicitta, and particular ultimate bodhicitta, you have to understand this. If say you did something quite good, and but still people think I did it. They don't realize how many other people help you to do that. And they think one person thinks he did it all on his own. So he's attached to aggregate as me, mine. And that's the true origin of suffering. Those people who are very wise, they know that I did very little, but most people helped me, made me possible to do it. People really humble, they realize, those people who win the gold, the girl who win the gold medal in swimming or something, she quickly can't help but go and embrace her coach. No coach ever get any gold medals. So they should have a coach. Humility, completely doing things completely most humble coach. They should give a medal for that. Why? Because people are attached to accomplishment as truly existing, and ego, and me, and mine. And yet, temporarily it looks like victory. Temporarily it looks like amazing. You get lots of money, name, everybody wants you. And all of a sudden, within a few years, you drop your performance. Then they drop down to this poor me feeling. Oh, I cannot do that anymore. And then they drop much lower than they rose from. So all these people feeling high now will drop very quick, sink very low one day, because they are attached. They attach to the victory as a truly existing thing without seeing it's empty of inherent existing. So because of not realizing emptiness of that, they have sign, they really want that sign, and therefore they have this wish to get that sign, and so on. So therefore emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness that we talked about, we just prefaced last week, is really important to understand the relationship with this. So then now we're going to talk. So therefore, these kind of true origin conception of true origin of sorrows are like the fertile soil in the summer. What does the fertile soil in the summer? Everything grows in the fertile summer, isn't it? All of a sudden, you never knew that your backyard could grow so much. Wait until the summer, because like that, all of the afflictions mushrooms in the garden of true origin of sufferings, self-grasping. In the garden of true origin of self-grasping, all the plants of the sufferings grows. So that's why he gives example here. So they're like the fertile soil. They are what are the fertile? The conception of grasping to aggregate as me. The manner of causation is very obvious. Like the wet ground, desire and attachment, I think we have a screen sharing there. There's a few, because I prepared this chart for you as I go through the explain. Can you do that? So yeah, so the like the wet ground, the desire and attachment are the 5 poisons. So we have 5 poisons, 5 elements, 5 sickness, 5 symptoms, 5 spirits, 5 rebirths. Yeah, 5 rebirths. So firstly is the 5 poisons. Because of the attachment as the on the wet ground of attachment and desire due to the wrong conception, then there is the 5 poisons. 5 poisons comes from, and the desire is related with water element, because water makes the garden very fertile, isn't it? Water makes the dry ground very fertile. So the water of the 5 elements, and it will make the person not wanting to get sick, but he will develop cold sickness of coldness, I mean the lower body diseases, cold sickness. So the poison, elements, and then sickness. Sickness is cold out of 5 sickness, and the symptoms of the sickness is the body become diminish its luster. Body diminish the youthfulness, strength of it, and the radiance of the body diminish, and so that's the symptom. And then the spirits is female spirits. Female spirits possess you. Female spirits possess you, and they become more rampant in you. And if these 5 factors are not remedied, you're going to be creating cause to be born as a ghost, hungry ghost, necessarily. So we're talking about how the true origin of suffering, of wrong conception of grasping to aggregate as me, then develop the desire, and then those elements and disease and so on. So those the first row. The poison is desire, elements is water, sickness is the cold, symptom is diminishing of bodily luster, and the spirit that possess the person is a female. I mean, this is particular energy of the female, and hungry ghost. One has more likelihood to become very hungry ghost-like mentality. And then the second row is the poison is this hatred. The hatred is rather like the pounding waves of the fear's river, pounding waves of fear's river. And so when there's hatred, it's so strong, it's like pounding waves of the strong river. They wouldn't have any hesitation to bump onto the rock or bump onto the bridge or whatever it is. Like that person who's agitated by the wrong conception of I, in the wrong conception I, and that causes the defilements of poisonous defilements of hatred, and then it related with fire elements. Then their body gets really heated. So fire of the 5 elements, and that causes the defilement, the disease in the body, bile disease. So bile disease of the 5 sickness. So bile disease, mainly to do with some heart and kidney problems, and the symptoms of the illnesses are very excruciating pain. The pains are very excruciating. So those who have a lot of hatred, their pains are very strong, excruciating. And spirit is male spirit. It's very aggressive, very male spirit. And if these 5 are not remedied, one is destined to be reborn in hell. You're not talking about next rebirth. One is in hell. Basically, one is in hell. So one who is angry, hatred, he is in the true origin of the hell. You don't have to go to hell. You are in it. So true origin of sorrow is hatred. And true origin of hatred is wrong conception. Why me? Why them? Why did you do this to me? That kind of very stinging wrong view, very aggressive, like pounding wave of the fierce river. These are Rongton's analogies. These pounding waves of the strong river. And then third one is the poison is ignorance. Ignorance is like the darkness. Darkness. You wouldn't know which is the door, which is the window, where you come through in the complete pitch darkness. So ignorance is darkness, and out of the five affliction, ignorance is the true origin of ignorance, of grasping to achievement as self, or accusation as him, and things like that. That is the darkness, yeah. And element that's related with ignorance is earth element. Your earth element becomes so hardliner. When you're ignorant, you're very hardliner, very earthy, very stiff, very earth, you know. So this is called the ignorance is like related with earth element, and out of the disease, it's fam disease, and the symptoms of the disease, that's fam disease, ignorance, is always feeling dull, very lazy, never wanted to do very much, always feeling very idle, and so these are the symptoms of the true origin of ignorance, And the evil spirits is the what we it's called God. I think we put the God, but we can call it a land spirit, the Bhumiputra. You know, they are the spirit of the soil or the land, soil or the land. So become very possessive, like the landowner, like the landlord of sufferings. Ignorant is the landlord of the suffering, and if these are not remedied, usually not, then one will have no choice but to be reborn in the animal realm. So those are the three root defilements. Then the next affliction is the next poison is the arrogance of pride. Arrogance is like a rocky cliff, you know. Rocky cliff is very high. And when a person has a lot of arrogance of the self, true origin of arrogance is there, to the wrong conception of I did it all by myself. This kind of thing. So the arrogance of grasping to what one did, or what one is, or what one feels as truly exists. That kind of arrogance is the true origin. Yeah, true origin. Then it poisons the mind to develop arrogance, which become like a hard rocky cliff. Rongton gives example, and it is the air element, because air element is much more, you can feel the air blowing much easily when you are in a rocky cliff, because the wind is very noticeable. So the arrogance is very puffed up, basically, filled with the empty air of arrogance. And such person will develop illnesses mainly in the neck and the shoulders. A lot of stiffness in the neck and the shoulders, and a lot of throat problems. And the symptoms of always the feeling very what do we call floating. There's a symptom of the floating, and it is also due to God's spirit. One's arrogance, you don't see anybody's importance but yourself. So because God don't see others, God don't see there's lower realms. You know, they don't see the others low people. They're always full of themselves. So that's, if they are not remedied, one will be reborn as a god. So that's the fourth one. Now the fifth, the last one, is the jealousy. The poison is jealousy. Jealousy is like air, you know, like air in the sense that air as an element, air as a feeling, but actually it's a spacious, you know. It's related with the elements of space, but jealousy makes oneself to be very light and easy to develop envy and jealousy, and it developed the sickness of combinations. Combination means all the former three. All the former cold, bile, heat and air. So usually we call cold, heat and air disease, but physiologically they go cold, bile, and phlegm disease. Phlegm diseases. This is combination. So the space elements is this with combined diseases, because jealousy usually is also combination of other afflictions. You have desire, you have attachment, you have pride, and then you have jealousy to others. So because the jealousy often is the quality of the other affliction. It isn't an affliction on its own. It is mixture of everything. So therefore, disease of combination. So you can have disease of all kinds, disease of combination diseases. And symptom of that kind of jealousy is also, they say the mind is feeling very much like a yo-yo feeling, and it can come with a lot of difficulty to urinate or excrete, maybe to do with constipation or something to do with lower passages, in a form of constipation, and possessed by some demonic spirit, not human male or human female, but kind of demonic spirits of a lot of suspicion and a lot of that kind of takes over the mind of person, and then he is more likely to be reborn on a demigod. Always jealous. Doesn't mean he will be reborn. You have to wait until die to become demigod, but always demigod in his mind. Never, always jealous of others. You can never rejoice somebody's success or company or friendship. You're so jealous. If somebody has that, you straight away think it's something else. So become very, very envious. So in this way, the 5 poisons, 3 poisons become 5, and from that 5 poisons, then all of these factors of the truth of origin. These 25 factors of the truth of origin. 25 factors of the truth of origin. So of course here Rongton is skillful not to discuss like the veins and the letters and things like that. But when you go into Vajrayana, then when they talk about the true factors of truth of origin, they will have 27. They have a list of many more factors. I should say many more factors than just these 5. Than just the 25. In any case, due to these 3 poisons, the 3 poisons came from the garden of the true origin of grasping to aggregate a self. Yeah. Then that gives rise to the desire for self, aversion to another, ignorance both, and then arrogance when you get it, jealousy when others get it. And so then so from that 3 poison develop these root afflictions very strongly rooted in us. Then there are 22 secondary afflictions, and all together they then multiply into 84,000 afflictions. So 5 sicknesses we were talking about. 5 sicknesses of we can call cold, heat, and air diseases, or combination, and the dual combination or triple combination. So here Rongton gives the neck particularly, but otherwise usually dual combination is 2 of the 3 poisons, 3 disease, 3 sicknesses. Triple combination means all the 3. So together, from 3 sicknesses become 5. From 5, they become 424 sicknesses, 424 illnesses. And in recent modern life, we have discovered many more than 424. 424 is a very, very ancient text. So ancient text. Before they study physiology and the neurology, biology, all these logies they didn't do. They only did the psychology. Psychologically, they say there are 424 diseases, but they don't realize lots of the bodily different parts got all kinds of disease. Yeah, so 424 is a psychiatric diseases. From the 3 poison become 5 become 22 become 84,000. Likewise, from the 5 illness become 424, and then also 5 evil spirits becomes 80,000 evil spirits. And then on top of that, there are 20,600 obstacles. 20,600 obstacles as 20,000 conditions. And from the 5 modes of sicknesses arise 360 irritable and frightful factors. These all therefore become what we call noble truth of the origin. Noble truth of the origin of suffering. Yeah. So that's the noble truth of origin of suffering is discussed here first, because that's the cause of the suffering, isn't it? So what is the suffering? The suffering itself. So that's the suffering itself is the truth of suffering. The above 3 and 5 afflictions arise 6 realms of existence, among which our human rebirth is one of the 6 rebirths. From them originate immeasurable sufferings. We are only going to talk about the sufferings of, say, human beings, okay? For this will do, because most people just can't stand even that. Why talk about all sufferings of all realms? We can barely handle the sufferings of this life, isn't it? This life. Okay. So main sufferings are 4 rivers of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So suffering of birth is like a bursting of bubbles. So therefore, here we're going to discuss the 8 truths of sufferings. And Rongton gives each of the 8 truths of sufferings one analogy to each of the 8 sufferings. So firstly, he says the suffering of birth is like bursting of bubbles, water bubble. So the bubbles come when the water bubble bursts, and then it creates more bubbles, isn't it? More bubbles after bubble, bubbles after bubble. So the birth is the bubbles of all sufferings. It will become many sufferings. Birth is the source of all bubbles of sufferings. There is no knowing as how to exhaust the taking rebirth in the 6 realms. Nobody knows how to stop these difficult sufferings. The suffering of birth is like the bursting of bubbles. It will elaborate a little bit later more on that. Second is that suffering of old age. Suffering of old age, becoming aging is like the rotten old tree. If you look at a rotten old tree, you can not only look outwardly very crooked or having no fresh leaves and branches, but inside all rotten. Inside is even more rotten. Quite a lot of people's bodies like that when they're old. And I met someone today on the bus stop. I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "I'm going to doctor's appointment." And I said, "Me too." just to check how rotten this tree is. How rotten this tree is, as a sign of aging. How does the aging of all the 4 elements, okay, or aging of the 4 elements, sign of aging earth from the loss of the weight, like a bare tree, All the people look like a bare tree, That's a sign of aging earth element. Sign of aging earth element. Sign of aging water element. Water element is the complexion turns bluish. Complexion turns bluish, and the veins become more noticeable. Veins become more noticeable, and instead of noticeable complexion of beauty and fitness and youth, there is noticeable bluish veins. bluish veins. They have no physical luster. As a sign of aging of the fire, which is the metabolism, body loses heat very quickly. All the peripheries of the body, like the legs and arms, gets very cold. Old people get really cold, become bolder in the winter, if you go outside, touch the boulder, it's very cold, you know. You think your hand is cold, go and touch the piece of rock. She's been there whole night. You just came out now, you think it's cold, go and touch it, touch the, and yeah, as a sign of aging, the body, fire element in your body become cold so quickly. Cold so quickly, you feel cold, you know. Some people's hand is always cold. Even in the house, the hand so cold. You can never keep it warm, you know. So why? A sign of aging of the fire element. So these are gradual, you know. This is not sudden, you know. This is slowly happening. And sign of aging air, which is your breath, one becomes short of breath, you know. You can see the people who are getting, their breath is so short, and for them to go from here to there, almost they have to say, no, I'm not going to do this today. I will do that tomorrow morning. I'll fold the jacket tomorrow. They haven't got the energy to get up and be sort of full of energy, lift and fold, all those things, you know. There's so much energy to just to even think, let alone physically go and do. Why? The energy, the oxygen, the energy itself has become so aged, and as if they're suffering from fever, you know, even though they have no fever. The sign of aging of the oxygen, they're always short of breath, you know. So that's an analogy. That's analogy of aging, yeah. And we thought it was just 8 analogies. Here there's so many analogies. Then the analogy of illness, you know, analogy of sickness. Analogy of sickness is like the flower that is killed by frost. Yesterday the flower was so beautiful, you know. Last night the frost, like nothing. It's like that when a person gets sick. The person has been, the frost has killed the flower in the person, you know. Sickness. You can see people sick. You can see they're like a flower. They didn't kill the frost. The example of death is like falling down from a steep mountain, you know. Yeah. Okay. The suffering of birth, you know. We were talking about suffering of birth. Again, the analogy of suffering of birth is like bubble. It's like a spring bursting from the meadow, you know. Spring bursting from the meadow, you know. You know, so birth is like when you see a cow giving birth to a calf, it's like a bursting, you know. It's like such a small birth channel, but such a big creature coming out. And she can barely stand the pain, you know. If that looks like painful to the poor cow, what must be like to the baby? He has to come through such a narrow passage and pulled by force of the karma, pushed by the force of karma as well, and coming through a narrow passage, every single joints, every single sort of piece would be almost nearly broken, you know. And we don't remember the suffering of being born, you know. That's why modern technology, modern medical technology, cesarean section. Why wait to go through such a narrow passage when you can just help from the tummy? Very good. And that also anesthetic. Very good. See, you can't feel nothing. You just open up, you know. So all this medical technology was developed so that the poor mother and the baby don't die. In the ancient time, before 400 years ago, a lot of mother and would-be born baby died from birth complications. Why? Suffering of birth is not only for the mother but the baby. It can't remember. So yet this birth is suffering. Birth is the result of the true origin of suffering, of grasping to aggregates, and you get an aggregate. Grasping to past lives aggregate, and then even though we left it, still we are grasping, and we get another. Okay, if you want to have, you can have another one, and then they give you another aggregate, and we confuse. That's me, and then we have no choice but to go through the result. Result of true origin of suffering is the suffering, which is the birth. So this analogy of the of a giving birth giving birth is bursting from meadow. It feels dissimilar to falling naked in a thorny bush. You know, the baby who may be received in the blanket or maybe in the hand of the nurse or whatever. But no matter how gentle, how good as nice gloves you're wearing, they all feels like a thorny bush. And baby usually screams because it can't stand every tactile that is not the amniotic fluid of the mother that they've been there for all this, all looks too super sensitive. So it feels dissimilar to falling falling naked in a thorny bush. When the mother picks the baby up, it is like hawk snatching little birds. Hawk, because mother usually picks it like the baby is suspended. It's only 3 kilos. She just picks it up, So he feels like a little. The mother looks like hawk. The bird, he feels all of a sudden almost dies. Must be shocking. That's why they have to treat how to carefully, not to lift like that, isn't it? Not to live like that. Usually when mothers deliver a baby on the floor by herself, she usually does that. She can only reach to the right arm and she picks one there. Looks like a hawk picking the birds, But these days we try to teach, lots of easy delivery, lots of helping, and so on and so forth. When the mother picks up the baby, it feels like hawk snatching the little birds. The suffering of aging is like stooping to a herd of goat or sheep, The aging, suffering of aging. Somebody is aging, where the person who's aged, the way he walks is like always stooping, and and stooping, not only stooping, but herd of goats in front of them. Even though it's only him, even though he's only walking from his bedroom to the toilet, but he's stooping like this. He's got herd of cows in front of him. He's just looking at that's why hospitals are made with very broad, so that there's enough room to stoop. Most people's homes are not really good enough to stoop because it's too narrow. So that's why they have to go to purpose-built old people's home because at least there's enough space, So this is talking about the suffering, the result of being born, and suffering of death is like falling into the deep abyss, And when a person dies, it looks like he feels like he's falling down from a steep mountain, and so that's the suffering of four sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Of course, this is just talking of physical suffering. They have no idea how much additional emotional suffering there is. The suffering of fear of meeting enemy. Is like a little birds always running for life for the swooping hawks, So this is constant, People always afraid of meeting some enemies or bad things, and they're always afraid of things. Hopefully, they won't encounter some difficulties or attackers or thugs or robbers, All these people in the self-defense course, what they are doing? They're all afraid they may be attacked in the alley. they're all learning because they're afraid they may be attacked by the unassuming enemies or people. You may give trouble. So lots of people spending hours doing self-defense just because they're afraid of being attacked by like the little chicks by the hawks, And a lot of the chicks never survive because hawks just comes from the height, it swoops in no time, and you don't have any chance, So here we are talking about undesirable setbacks, obstacles, accident. I would say, disasters, disasters, accidents. We are talking about professional accidents, a lot of undesirable happenings happen, and Even before flight, even taking off the flight, they say everybody must put on the seat belt and all of that. They're all afraid they will be falling. So constantly fearful that something may happen. And whether its enemy is not people or maybe just nature, could be accident, could be unfortunate circumstances. And for the little chicks, the hawk is unfortunate circumstances. He's swooping down, and there he goes. And then the next is suffering or fear of parting from the loved ones, and losing the only child. Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't believe. Not only suffering of fear of losing or parting, they are parted. Those who want to be together, they're not together. Even they're together, they're afraid they will, even before they come together, they're afraid they will have to part. Even when they're together, they kind of enjoy the together. They still have to part next Monday. And then you don't know when they're going to see again. And therefore, this anxiety, so this suffering, this is a truth of suffering. The true origin of the suffering is grasping to me, grasping to being close to this person, then your life is better. But grasping to another person who you work with is not important. You never feel safe with it. Just workmate is workmate. You never could, See, people are attached to the family and aversion to the non-family. So that's how the true origin is created. Not because the one is people, one is monkey, Sometimes the people you work with that looks like much more pleasant than your families are. But still you're attached to the very families you don't get on well with. And very people you don't want to spend any time, you spend most of the time with them. So so that's the suffering. People don't have choice not to, because this is the result of the true origin of grasping to the aggregate, to the aggregate of self. So not only that, suffering of guarding and protecting loved ones and things are like all person having to herd a flock of sheep. Yeah, one is so old, but one still worrying about everything, from things, from little tools, to savings, to friends, to their books, to their objects. They still really are constantly enslaved. They are suffering of guarding, protecting, worrying their value, and think they will be wasted, and constantly enslaving to just, and their bodily energy is being completely wasted by doing that, but yet they don't know that. Because they have responsible to look after all of this, as they got lots of benefit after looking after, they got lots of merit to take in the next life and so. But all the karma of attachment, of greed and argument and competition that one creates, one doesn't know how much heavier a burden one is packing for the next life. So therefore, the person who is guarding and protecting loved ones, you don't do anything to guard your loved ones. Even though they're wrong, you don't admit they're wrong. You still think, I'll defend them. And then you go and harm somebody who's just completely innocent. And this is causing all the suffering, conflict, and fighting between people, is suffering of guarding one's people, one's land, one's property, as if they are truly existing. Because one thinks one's property and one's loved one is truly existing, truly real. One doesn't see the emptiness of them. One doesn't see the signlessness of them. One doesn't realize they are also aging earth, water, fire, and air. That's all they are. But they don't see them, they're aging earth, fire, and water. They think it's my mother. They think it's my loved ones. And they do not see them that as aging pile of bones and aging pile of blood and aging pile of skin. They don't see that. They still think it's a truly existing mother, truly existing husband. And then they bring a lot of pain and sorrow. That's the true suffering. The truth of suffering is that. Only the noble ones who see the emptiness see this as the truth of suffering. But the ordinary people deny that, despise that, resist that, reject that, and only to exacerbate that suffering. if they're despising and struggling, doing that, reduce the suffering, that will be good. No, it makes the suffering become even more like a hard rock. It's almost like unbreakable rock. So because the true origin of suffering is grasping to the aggregate of me and my, So, yeah, and even if your mother dies, it still is a just bundle of aged earth, water, fire, and so on. Age, lots of, what do you call, aged transport, aged porridge, aged lunches. And then no more than that. The aggregate is made up of all of that, They just transform, looks like mother, but actually they are aged porridge. Aged porridge, aged bananas. And the bananas, banana become really aged, they become black, and they become so small, and they never stay straight. They become so small because there's no moisture left, So all people, when they're seeking suffering, is not because they're aging you're suffering, but because you attach to them as my mother you're suffering. You still haven't got the conception that is not truly existing mother. There's no truly existing mother that is the body. Conventionally speaking, there is my mother, but ultimately the mother is just composition, aggregates. Mother is just constituents, compilation, compounded aggregates of these things. Now these things have all aged. So when you have this eye to see the aging of someone or even your body aging, you don't suffer. You can see that as the truth of the suffering when you're attached to the true origin of suffering, not that as true origin as me. So that's why we need to meditate to understand the truth of suffering. Whether there's pandemic or not, there is the truth of illness. Even without, actually more people are dying every day by other illnesses, but we are not talking about those these days. It's interesting, isn't it? Only as if there were 4 people who died. Only as the 4 people who died in New South Wales. If they really reported all the people who died in Australia, there will be hundreds every day. But they're not reporting them. They're not reporting them because they can't stand. These things don't happen, Death doesn't happen except there's a pandemic. There's that kind of aversion to pandemic, But actually, death is happening without any of this. Most people are dying just because they're earth aged, they're water aged, they're fire aged, and all the 5 aggregate age, and there is no really truly existence there, So you can't see. So the fear of losing the loved ones, fear of guarding the things, and then fear of not finding what one is looking for. It's like a searching for a lost animal, lost pet, I would say, looking for its hoof prints. Everybody looking for the hoof prints of their lost pet. So that means they're always searching. They're always looking. They're always looking for what they want. What they want. Always looking for that one, more profit, more income, more recognition, more bonuses. always looking for more and more, just to add to the cause of the worry, of course. But he doesn't know that because he's not Arya. He doesn't have the truth, nobleness to know that is the true suffering he's creating. So through the suffering of not being able to suffering of parting from the loved ones, and suffering of not being able to guard what one has is hard to practice. So one is not able to let go of what one can't do. One always wanted to do, achieve something, thinking that is accomplished. There's no contentment in one. Suffering of not finding what one is looking for, is not being able to attain the perfect enlightenment. Yeah, you couldn't gain a perfect enlightenment in this way. In this way, so what we're saying is the three these types of suffering. Of course, here we talk about 8 types of suffering. When we talk about 8 types of suffering, this is talking about 8 types of suffering of human being, which are all suffering of change. Okay, suffering of change, and suffering of change is because young become old, straight become crooked. There are many other becomings too. The straight people. Straight become crooked, yeah. Straight become crooked, The thin become fat, fat becomes, people who have fit legs no longer got legs, amputated. So all these things are suffering of change. So when we say the 8 analogy of truth of suffering is only talking about the suffering of human beings. Suffering of human being, that is suffering of change. And this doesn't include the suffering of suffering of suffering. Suffering is largely the suffering of lower realms, sentient beings and animal, demigods, God. They go through the what we call suffering of suffering, because whatever they do, it becomes suffering. They don't have even a little reprieve or little break. But human beings got, So you're sitting there on the floor. You've been very tired walking, you sit there, you're a little bit comfortable. So there is at least temporary pleasure in sitting. After a while, you say, I don't want to sit anymore. You want to get up. Then the suffering of sitting, pleasure of sitting, become cause of suffering again. And the suffering of change means it would be suffering. So therefore, it's called suffering of change. And Rongton doesn't discuss in depth about suffering of suffering, because that's suffering of lower realms and animals and so on. Some people's life are almost like the animals or hungry ghosts or hell being. Their suffering is suffering of suffering. Whatever they do, it's suffering. There is not even small break. Now the third suffering is called suffering of all-pervasive conditioning. Suffering of all-pervasive conditioning is what we talked already, the true origin of suffering, of wrong conception of grasping to aggregate as self. That's the all-pervasive true origin. Most people don't complain that. Most people don't say, oh, I got the suffering of all-pervasive conditioning today. And they don't. That's too subtle for the people to have the eye to spot it, But those of us who are doing that, listening to Rongton like this, we should be able to think like that every day. Then you have really taken the steps of listening and heeding to the perfection of wisdom. We no longer complain of suffering of change anymore, because that's inevitable. That's inevitable. But suffering of change is a result of suffering of all-pervasive conditioning. All-pervasive conditioning is this conditioning thinking, body is me, name is me, gender is me, and these kind of conditioning is so pervasive. People don't even think it's a concern to worry about that. They don't even worry that is the cause of suffering. So the Buddhist people who understand the true all-pervasive suffering of conditioning, suffering of conditioning, this is called conditioning. Conditioning is grasping to the aggregate as self, mistakenly understand aggregate as self. Now, so let's look at this suffering of how pervasive conditioning is. So when you develop grasping to it's difficult to not have this grasping to the immediate physical body, for instance. A lot of people's all-pervasive conditioning suffering is not just their body, things, and property. They are so attached to them as much as theirs. They'll do anything to fight for that. They'll spend more to keep that. To fight to keep that, they'll spend more to get that. Wow, they're so pervasive. They grasp, they think that's them. If they have that, they are more themselves. So all pervasive condition is suffering of this grasping to the aggregate, whether it's form, whether animate object or inanimate people, animate people or animals or cat or pets or something like that, or things. Yeah, people are grasping to them as mine, as my land, and they put barbed wire around it. And in the meantime, nothing is happening in the thing. They're protecting it from the other, grasping to those things. It's so much so concretely. The more conditioning they have to say it's mine, the more the grasping and suffering extends, isn't it? So the more things you think it's you're conditioning yourself that much more pervasively because it's mine. That's why the rich people can't sleep very well, because they have lots of conditionings. They have lots of conditioning to worry, thinking it's them. The person who is sleeping under cardboard box really sleeps very well. No matter how noisy the traffic is, he doesn't know, but he never says, "Oh, the traffic doesn't allow me to sleep." He never says that because he has no conditioning. There's no conditioning that nobody should make noise. His suffering is minimized by his minimum grasping to things. You know, they're a lot easy to become happy. The mouthful of food will make them happy because their conditioning is so minimized by the lack of things that they are conditioned to think it's them. Because our conditioning to self and property and possessions and friends and followers or supporters, the more attachment one has towards them, that much it's conditioned your own sufferings. Yeah, isn't it? So that's what is all conditioning, all pervasive conditioning. It's pervasive conditioning because the more you think something is yours, that conditions you to more likelihood to suffering. So the suffering of pervasive conditioning is the mother of all sufferings. It's so subtle that most people don't know that. And that's why in Buddhist we meditate on emptiness, because the real cause of compassion to sentient beings is not knowing the true origin of sufferings. Pervasive conditioning. Conditioning to grasping the aggregate as me and others as mine or not mine, this attachment to some aversion to another. So when one sees how it all mushrooms or sort of bursts from that, then you don't need to see a broken leg or poor person in front of you to feel compassion. You just by merely thinking of the all-pervasive conditioning of sentient beings, you can always feel empathy and stay in Avalokitesha like a pervasive compassion. So you have universal compassion because there is not a single sentient being who is not affected by suffering of all conditioning. You know, they may look very healthy or fit or strong or maybe very loved or like that. You know, that's why when Milarepa was laughed at by some young, pretty Lhasa girls, when they saw him looking very weak and not very wearing decent clothes and begging on the street, and they all walk past him, they giggle and say, "What a pity, poor man," you know. And then Milarepa says, "Oh, I pity you. I pity your prettiness. Your whole condition in grasping to your little sort of brocade clothes and rosy cheek, you know, youth, and you think that you're you know. He says, I feel compassionate to you." And they say, "Why you feel compassionate? We are healthy, we are strong. You look so miserable." Then he sang a song, you know. He sang a song to tell that all sufferings of this grasping to self as truly existing, and then conditioning oneself with that, with everything you do, you succeed, you own, you have, and that they think one thing they are me or mine, or everything that's mine, we're afraid of not becoming mine, and then you have to do all sorts of things to protect and guard it, and then worries and anxiety. So this is the conditioning. All the afflictions are conditioned by one another. But we do not know we are not conscious of this conditioning. So the meditation is try to reach a state of unconditioned state of mind that is unadulterated, undistracted, unpolluted, uncraving to something, simply seeing the lack of importance of grasping to anything, including one's aggregate, for it is not truly existent. So this shows the understanding of the first two truths. One is the result, which is the truth of one is the cause, which is the true origin of suffering, and the truth of suffering is the result. Usually we discuss other way around. We discuss the result first and cause later. When we talk about truth of suffering, we're talking about the cause, which is the result, and then we talk about true origin briefly. We hardly talk about the true origin of suffering very much. They say, true origin of suffering is craving or something. In the some Theravadan literature, there's a true origin of suffering of craving. It's generally true. If you elaborate it, there's all truth in that. But it doesn't quite explicitly say true origin of suffering is grasping to the aggregate as truly existing me. This is more explicit in perfection of wisdom literature like this. So even when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, you can see the Four Noble Truths as elementary Buddhist teaching common. You can introduce all suffering from desire and craving. And so that's the true origin. But what is the desire and craving? By whom? To what? So that's why the true origin of suffering is craving and grasping to the aggregate as me and mine. So have to be, Mahayana is broad, it just opens up the whole thing and it reveals the whole teaching. And that's why the perfection of wisdom, when we talk about perfection of wisdom, we have to understand the perfection of wisdom that explains the truth or origin of suffering. And then then the truth of suffering. Then all of our sufferings have true origin is grasping to the aggregate as apprehending it as truly existing me. It doesn't say that true origin of suffering is your wrong actions. Wrong actions is just secondary causes of sufferings. The root of the true origin of origin is the grasping to the aggregate as truly existing self. That's why Nagarjuna says in the root text of the Madhyamika, he says, first one develop grasping to this and aversion to that, and then everything becomes manufactured, multiplies from that. So when you're able to think like that, no matter what people does to you, doesn't become cause of your suffering. They may be a conditioning. They become an all-pervasive conditioner. If you have this grasping to the ego, grasping the aggregate as mine. Of course we do. It's a question of if is not a likelihood. Likelihood. We always have the grasping. Except some days your mind is very clear and sharp and insightful and very, very meditative. You can really see the insight of the teachings of the perfection of wisdom. You can really see the teaching of emptiness, coming through this understanding. So in any way, going back to the truth of suffering and the truth of origin. So then, therefore, as a sign of the mushrooming or explosion of the three poisons, so therefore one needs to understand how to stop the explosion of three poisons. So people in their life, even though they love food, there will be a time they are giving up many food as the enemy. So I'm giving up that. I'm not eating that. That's not bad. That's not good for me. What did they're grasping to me? They're grasping. They want to still keep the grasping going, so that, of course, we are not saying you shouldn't give up certain food, bad for you, this or that, but still, it's motivated by the grasping, so the sign of increased desire to exist. Increased desire to exist. One is willing to renounce that food, so that with grasping to the existence of self can be maintained. And then, then even the food that you loved, you hate those food. You know, you like them, but you hate them. You know, so you have the love and hate to the food. You know, you love the food, but every time you see it, you don't like it because you know this is the cause of my craving. So the food is the catalyst for your craving. Your real cause of craving is me. So I still wanted to keep the me saved from eating fatty food. So as if minus the fatty food, you can still continue the craving going on. So there's still no trimming of the ego. No trimming of the ego. Of course there's no trimming of ego. Who's interested in trimming of the ego? Even when they're giving up certain food for health, they're still doing the old conditioning of pervasive self-grasping. No less. Of course, this is not easy to do. Not easy to do. Yeah, not easy to do because they still want to live another 5 years. And so the resenting towards the food that you gave up, or resenting that you have to give up, even though you don't want to give up, but you give up. And so there's a lot of people who become very, very old, really irritable, very easy, quickly become very, very upsettable, because they don't have anything to keep their contentment or desire last long. Their desire and one thing they desire, they took so much effort to get it, but as soon as they got it, they just quickly become disappointed with that. So the very thing they took so much effort to get it became very much cause of hate and agitation. You know, that happens without becoming old as well. Without becoming old as people take a lot of effort to get there, and as soon as they get there, they're just not happy with anything, like a children crying over a toy. So the suffering of all conditioning existence so strong. Flying like a bird is a sign of increased ignorance. So it means you're very, 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 very jumpy, very, very jittery, very, very jittery, sign of ignorance. Experiencing hard pain like horn is a sign of increased arrogance. You know, you take hurt so serious, so personally. You did this and hurt me, and then resent them, and then just every time you see them, you still feel the pain. You have no sign of letting go of the pain. You think it's they are the cause of pain to me, and they are truly existing. So are you. So both self is truly existing, so is phenomena truly existing. So there is no sign of emptiness of either of these two. So there is no emptiness of self, and the other there is no way of giving up the sign of self and sign of other. And there is, how could you give up the wish? So emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness is very difficult to. So that's why a person needs a lot of merit to understand fitness, to know that that these are sign of grasping to the all-pervasive conditioning. When you are increasing any of the five afflictions, any of the five affliction, like the shortness of breath, like increased jealousy. At that time, all forms of seat or cushion or chair, wherever you sit, is like uncomfortable like thorns. You know, wherever you sit, it's never comfortable. So there's like that. So restless. You want to sit. You over there. You came to sit here. And when you sit there, so it's never a moment of pleasure or stillness or comfort, because the mind is so restless. You know, anything one wears are heavier than the mountain. So the body will feeling so cold. You want to wear clothes. The cloth is too heavy. You want to feel warm, but if you to wear warmer, you have to wear a little bit heavier things. And then when one is cold, it's cold. When it's cold, when the cold is removed by heat, then it's too heavy. so hardly there's any moment of pleasure. All pillows are hard as rock. So whichever side of the pillow you have, whichever cover it is, whichever color it is, never possible. All food is bitter like bitter medicine. Like this is like towards the near death, you know. A lot of people you can see when they can't eat any food. They have no appetite for any. And then they don't also have any energy to talk. You know, they can maybe hear you, but they themselves have. There's some people who stay like that for years. You know, they just can't say anything. They still can see you, and they take a lot of effort to get something, but quickly disappointed with that. And they say, no, I want that. And they get that, and they say, no, take it away. There is no pleasure of anything that lasts long when your body has become so succumbed by illness and aging. At that time, the body will suffer like a fish thrown into hot sand. There's whichever, whether you stand up, whether you lie down, whether you sit, whether you're in front of someone, or whether you're on the veranda, or wherever, never. There's never a moment of pleasure, you know. It's, a lot of people are spending like that. They might have quite a lot of people caring, but they just couldn't do anything. They don't know what to keep their mind happy because they're so much in stress, so much in pain, they don't know. Many of these pains are not just physical, they're emotionally. The true origin of suffering is mainly the 5 afflictions, yeah? 5 afflictions. The bodily sign of illnesses, they can never even feel the bottom. They can never feel they're wetting themselves. That's not a suffering. They don't feel suffering of wet or suffering of being sitting in a puddle of food. They don't know that. But the mind, the suffering of mind, the anxiety, you know, the body's got no ability to enjoy anything, but the mind becomes so much like a fish thrown in the sand. This is the analogy that fish thrown in the sand is not there's not any position the fish enjoys. If it's this upside down, jumps up, down, there's not a single moment of restfulness. A lot of people's mind is like this. So much in distress, so much in trouble, because the 3 suffering of conditioning, existence of I, me, mine are so strong, they don't have any merit and wisdom to understand these differently. Sitting in an upright posture, but the Lord of Death has no mercy. Person might be still sitting that he should sit up when he dies. Yeah, but he can't sit up. He wants to sit up, but he can't sit up. The bodily energy has completely gone. You know, so body has no energy. You know, head is heavier than it's too heavy for the neck to support. Neck is too droopy for the shoulder to support. And so there's not a single of the not a single prop works to support anything. Body is completely, you know. You have to be almost lifted up people, or you have to almost paraplegic person. Everybody almost become paraplegic towards that last end of one's life, isn't it? Even though not paraplegic, but the energy is completely not there. That's physical. Verbally speaking, the verbal sorrow of the old and dying is like a camel who has lost her calf. Have you seen the camel who's lost her calf? You know, the kind of noise she makes, you know. So the noise of the person who's going through, you can hear them in distress whole night, whole morning, whole afternoon, except brief moments of sleep. Even that is so short. And they are making noise, they want this. They're talking to themselves, they're screaming, and they basically lost their mind, you know. However piercing, howling sound she makes, there's no way the pain will go away, you know. No matter what is done, the pain will never decrease. The mental anxiety is like that of a deer caught up in the trap, whose frightened eyes says it all. And if you look at the deer that is trapped in a snare or a trap, you can see, you know, the eyes are completely So most sentient beings, when they are in their old age, sickness, dying situation, they are like that. Why? They're grasping to the conditioning existence of I is so strong. And even the symptoms of physical like that, if your mind have the merit to see the emptiness of self, there is not the body, there is not anything else, all these are just conditioned by so many lifetimes to identify me and not me, and these kind of create all this suffering. Alas, when you have that, cholera practitioner don't suffer at the moment of this kind of situation. What should one do in these kind of circumstances? There appears to be no way to escape. When one knows that one will die, and when there is the suffering of not knowing what to do after Lord of Death has arrived. You don't know what to do. Then start remembering all the bad things one did, and all the good things one failed or one didn't succeed, and then feels very frightful, very guilty, and start worrying about the surviving family members even more than one was able to do when was alive. Belatedly, all of this regret and guilt and fear and all sorts of things can most people don't die really from physical death. All this just total defeat by these things. The fearful situation becomes unbearable. And because they have denied death, they have deceased death, they think not dying is living type of thing. They don't realize every moment they are dying. Because they are so alien, so despising, so denial of the death, they always been denying death. Death seems so difficult to accept. They're angry they have to die. They're angry they will have to die. They're angry when they're dying. They're angry where they're dying. And not a single condition of their death is acceptable. Why? The conditional existence of I and grasping is so innately permanent, so static, that one doesn't want it to negotiate. So this is the hard rock we were talking about. This is this kind of the rock that is so unwilling to change. It's so rigid, because the ego is so rigid. It doesn't want you to let go and be spacious. It doesn't want to do that. One might be even surrounded by all the loved ones, relatives, but they cannot do a thing. Yet you did all of that for them, to raise them, to feed them, to clothe them. You did them. You think they will be able to help you and so on. All proven to be wrong. Instead, they all feel helpless, feel guilty that they couldn't do anything, because deluded people do so much hoarding and amassing wealth, thinking these things will help me to ransom death or nature of the death or like that. Then they realize all of them are all futile. Even loved ones only have the sorrow to watch you die in distress. And is there any beneficiary there? No, it becomes cause of so much. You may have a huge amount of wealth, you may own so many things, but not a single penny, not a single needle. Tibetans call needle because they always have to sew things. That shows they have to make their clothes by themselves. In the West they call penniless. Yeah, single penny will help you. Even you got 5 credit cards, you can never swipe even one. They don't accept credit card in the Lord of Death office, and they don't mind whatever you have in the bank, whatever savings you have. Oh, this is just completely got useless. Only thing is you have to carry the burden of hoarding, amassing, and fighting with greed and competitiveness. All of that one has to carry helplessly. Even if they call for help, it is helpless. Even if they hold your hands, it's completely, your hand is so cold. They're almost afraid they're touching you, because they can now see you are not anymore, and they don't realize you're not body. But yet they think you're the body, and they make your body up, looks beautiful, and it looks handsome, so that you can go to the last party. You can go to the last party. I've seen this. Even when I didn't get to go to Melbourne for Lauren's funeral, but they show me the photo on the in the Zoom. Even his face. He's just a monastic practitioner all his life. Even his face looks really much more handsome than he used to be. I don't know why we do this. why we try to deceive one more time? It's one too many times. And there's hardly any opportunity to do. Yeah. Even if you wave your hands, nobody will see you. Even if people send you a lot of blow kiss, you will never see even one kiss. Maybe hundreds of them around you. They're all sending "I love you," but you can't hear nothing. You can't see nothing. You can't even say the last words that you would have otherwise said. You just completely, even to say one word, it's not possible. You be completely robbed of all sign of life. So whether we change clothes, whether we do cosmetic, whether put in a nice shiny box, all of that is just to deceive ourselves yet again. And they call to the children, "What happened to my mom?" They say, "Went to heaven." Oh gosh, look at that. Isn't deceiving again? Went to heaven. Who went to heaven? So of course, Buddhistically speaking, of course, there's nobody who go to heaven. But of course, as long as the karma and afflictions are not consummated, purified, there will be, because the consciousness is still so trapped in the karma and affliction conditioning. So there will be the person who go to hell or whatever rebirth, but there is actually no one goes to heaven or hell if you really understand emptiness. And so when we say there is one who goes to heaven and hell, that shows still grasping is there. Your mom went to heaven, so it means good. So I will also come to heaven. Yes, you come. I'll reserve a seat for you. There's this kind of even among Buddhists. There's a lot of this heaven, believing in the pure realm, and Sukhavati kind of cult. It's because people haven't understood the truth of origin of suffering. Most people have no fitness to understand that, because a person who understands emptiness, so few. Even those who try to explain emptiness, most of them are a terrible job, like I am. You can't explain emptiness. That's why there's inexpressible. It's inexpressible, and yet we try to explain. So we cannot just sit there and just go beyond thinking, go beyond meditating, go beyond aspiring this, aspiring that. Suspension of grasping of all kinds is real perfection of wisdom. Emptiness, So that's why the understanding of emptiness is so crucial. Highest form of ultimate bodhicitta is emptiness. Otherwise, your bodhicitta becomes a relative bodhicitta only. So a relative bodhicitta unaided by the ultimate bodhicitta is blind man. Very fit legs, fit arms, fit everything, but still blind. So the ultimate bodhicitta is the understanding of the emptiness. And so that which disallows us from understanding emptiness is the true origin of suffering, which is the grasping to the aggregate as self, grasping as feeling as self, grasping as perception of self, grasping as my perception as being correct as correct. Yeah. Everybody thinks that my perception is correct. Person who understands a little bit of suffering of all conditions should see, perception is not reliable. Even your perception is not entirely reliable. So you don't worry about other perception being completely opposite to yours. You don't worry about other people having a totally different opinion of yours. Why? Because your own perception is not entirely reliable. So when you have no such ability to think like that, you're constantly plastering the sufferings. The true origin of suffering is the grasping to the aggregate self. And unless one has sufficient comprehension and understanding, merit to understand emptiness, which is cultivated by practice of devotion, meditation, discipline, and the 6 parameters we talked about, all the 6 when we talk about these things, and then each of the activities we do, we are able to complement them with the prajna paramita, perfection of wisdom, is the emptiness of what you did. If you did a lot, don't talk about it at all. If you did a lot, but if you talk what you did, you blew it away. They say you blew it away. They say he did 100 prostrations, but at the end he says, whoo, then he blew it away. Tibetan saying, Chakya hushu nala tor. Person did diligently 100 prostrations. At the end he says, whoo, he got sighed as what a dreadful thing I have to do this much. Then he blew it away. So like that, we do so much, but we get attached to them or develop aversion to that what I have to do and resentment what I have to do. And that's grasping. That's the true conditioning. True all-pervasive conditioning is that. Even one has to seal the emptiness of what one did. Because what one did is, form is emptiness. Likewise, what one did is emptiness. Emptiness is what one did. Emptiness is no other than what we did, and what one did is no other than emptiness. So, it's not just with form, no. Of course, what one did. Same with, if you think of someone else did some terrible thing, you should meditate on the emptiness of what they did. You shouldn't think that what they did is truly them. If you do that, you are not anything different than them. But probably worse, because you're on top of that, you have your own wrong perception. What they did is empty of inherent. What they did is conditioned by a number of things, majority of which they have no control by themselves. Yeah. The cord of the charger is not truly existing cord. It is a cord, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't charge by itself. It doesn't have the phone. It doesn't have the plug. It charges nothing. All the people, all the telephone selling shops, they have lots of cord there, but nobody buys. They're not truly existing cord, So they might have to reduce 50% next time because if nobody want to buy, their value will drop. You can imagine. Have you seen those shops? They're 50% discount. Why the 50% discount? They look perfectly okay. Because it will only last for 2 days. You can see in the Woolies sometimes they're selling some of the food. They drop 50%. That's why? You have to use it by tomorrow. After that, it's not even 50% worthy. So, emptiness, meaning it's impermanent, doesn't last long. But yet there is strong grasping onto permanence and true existence and soul, autonomously existing thing. So, there is nothing that is permanent, autonomously, inherently existing thing in anything whatsoever. Not only things, but doings. It's very important. How can you pardon somebody? How can you forgive somebody if you don't have emptiness? You have no idea how to practice forgiveness unless emptiness is practiced. Even 35 Buddhas couldn't help you much. 35 Buddhas all sit there. They say, wow, he's really devoted to me. He really believe in me. He's doing all this prostration. And you do all these amazing confession practices, Really physically you're doing all this chanting. All the 35 Buddhas still saying, oh gosh, he's got no chance to getting free. He still think I'm going to help him. So this theistic Buddhist, theistic Buddhist. His oldest Dalai Lama is now he's almost, he's sort of pinching everybody. He says praying doesn't work. He says all the time, he says praying doesn't work. Of course, he's really saying you got to realize wisdom. Without wisdom, no matter what religious thing you do outwardly and so on and so forth, you're still grasping, You're still grasping to this amazing, some external being can, pardon you all your wrongdoings and so on. So therefore, when we do, I can say this, majority of you are very familiar. When you do Vajrasattva practice, for instance, or you do refuge practice, when you do refuge practice, first you do refuge, visualize very clearly, visualize where the Buddhas are, where Bodhisattvas are, where Yidams are, where Dharmas are, where the lineage gurus are, and then think of yourself and others, everyone, and then do the refuge practice one pointedly, physically, verbally, mentally. In the end, then you have to visualize all of the refuge object dissolve into emptiness, isn't it? Emptiness, and then that dissolve into you. The subject object become one, and you also don't exist. There's amazing sense of vacuity, absence of both you and the other, and then you stay in that meditation, isn't it? So that's exactly the perfection of wisdom. Is not just emptiness meditation applied in every Vajrayana meditative practices. While you do the accumulation merit aspect of the practice by doing prayer, by doing the faith and devotion, visualization, you do good 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 2 hours, whatever you do. But at the end, you got to pause. You got to stop there for good few minutes at least, Because people want to go on and do something else, and they become more interested in that. They don't know how to stay in that state of meditative equilibrium of the emptiness, Because most people are not ready for emptiness meditation, let alone signlessness, let alone wishlessness. They always wish, what's next? What's next page? Sometimes, I remember His Eminence Chogye Trichen Rinpoche, when we do the puja, lots of monks doing lots of symbols and all. Sometimes he just enter into some kind of semi-meditation and sleep together, and he's no longer ritually following us anymore. No, and all the monks are slowly becoming slow. They also become muter and muter, and then the puja leader monk is watching. Rinpoche just wake up. Then he has to continue, and Rinpoche just continue. There's nothing have happened. Yeah, of course nothing happening or nothing will happen. So it's that kind of, you could enter into that kind of state of meditation on emptiness. And emptiness meditation realization needs to be facilitated by the relative bodhicitta practices. Even when we're listening and contemplating and talking the Dharma, the effort of listening and thinking is the relative bodhicitta, engaging bodhicitta, wishing and engaging bodhicitta. But in the background, you have to have the understanding of emptiness. Sentient beings like myself who don't understand this are so conceptually wrong in grasping to aggregate as self, as permanent, as truly existing, as independently existing, or so what somebody did as truly themselves entirely responsible. We have this kind of fixated, hard-liners wrong view, and beings suffer because of this. So you can always stay in that state of meditation emptiness, always, not at the end, Why you want to do at the end only, when you can do all the time? Why you have to do only at the end and the beginning, when you can dwell in the state of? Why are you sitting on the moon cushion? Why you have the moon and lotus? You have to support it constantly by the fully waxed bodhicitta. Fully waxed bodhicitta is emptiness. So one need to remain in that state of dharmakaya, and then manifest rupakaya, then manifest activities. And so, with this we will conclude here. That's the first true truth. Truth of origin of suffering first, and the truth of suffering, which is the result. The result is discussed later, cause is discussed first. Why? Buddha said, all things arise from causes, and he also taught the cause, how to uncause that. To uncause that, you have to reverse the cause in effect. We have suffering, which is the effect of past origin of sufferings. So we have ample sign of the result. So now, in order to uncause the suffering, we have to create a cause, and that is the understanding true origin of suffering. When we understand true origin of suffering, then we have a beginning of tasting the emptiness. This is why last week we talked about the three thorough doors of liberation, which is emptiness, signlessness, wishlessness, and now we are now talking about how not realizing the emptiness then develop the true grasping to the origin of suffering as truly existing self, how therefore it produces the undesirable sufferings that we don't want. So when we know that, then we now have a greater, I would say, ability to understand the true second truth. Second truth is the truth of the path and truth of the cessation. Because the path is the cause. Practicing the path then gains the result, which is the cessation. So that will be next week. Thank you, everyone. So that's elaboration on the first true truth of the four truths tonight. So with this, thank you, everybody. Let's do the dedication of merit. Ojana Badesenede Erenda Mahayana Cheje Whatever Mereda Habagra Mehobe Begas Deleveza Choda Mahayana Cheje Courage Manju Genuode Azama Dabadra Jelawa Following Ode Example Ashade Dege Ode Mere Mede Exalem Body Chida Tebe Vere Nayedanza Where has been Vomeyedenga Really without a generation. Thank you, everyone.